Hi, welcome to Miss Richardson's U.S. History 5-Minute Lectures. This information will be U.S. Notes 6.7, Reagan's Presidency. It includes information that aligns with the second section on your Unit 6 study guide. Now remember, you have control over this lecture, so use your study guide to figure out what's important, pause, write down any questions you have, and rewatch as often as you need to. Let's go ahead and get started. So in the last set of notes, I told you about conservatism and the 1980s and how it changed. Now I want to tell you more about Reagan's actual policies as president and a conservative president. So you already learned about Reaganomics, or supply-side economics, which Reagan supported. We talked about that already. So in short, this policy cut taxes on businesses and business owners and expected them to then use the extra money to pay their workers more or hire more workers. This would then mean that more Americans would have more money. More money meant that they would buy more. Buying more would increase demand, meaning businesses would need more workers. Workers would hire more people, and so on. So that's the cycle that would continue an upward spiral. You might kind of remember that we talked about it in the 30s and the Depression, the different spirals we were looking for. Another way Reagan tried to help businesses make more money in hopes that it would trickle down to the workers was called deregulation. So deregulation is the lifting of regulations or rules from businesses. Governments regulate businesses in different ways. For example, if Xcel Energy wants to raise the amount they charge for electricity, they must get approval from the government. This keeps prices fair to consumers, especially in regard to utilities and other needed services or goods. So Reagan deregulated many industries while he was president. Airlines, cable companies, natural gas, savings and loans, buses, trucking, all these sorts of things were deregulated during his presidency. The idea was that companies would make more money and then share it with the people and their workers. Now, it didn't really work out that way. The businesses kept most of the money for the top executives, and workers' wages remained stagnant. Deregulation did not meet its desired goal. We would consider it a failure. Now, during the same time, Reagan had to look at foreign policy as well, and he ended détente and re-entered the Cold War. So he was really concerned that the Soviet Union was still arming themselves and could attack us at any moment. So to counter this threat, he used technology to increase American security. To do this, he created SDI, or the Strategic Defense Initiative. More commonly, it's known as Star Wars. So it actually was developed shortly after that film came out and kind of got tied to that. This program was designed to defend the U.S. using outer space. Basically, the U.S. began researching and developing plans to use satellites and missiles that would enable us to bomb the Soviets without ever leaving the U.S. In addition, if the Soviets tried to bomb us, we could use the same technology to stop a missile aimed at the U.S. Now, it was really expensive, and with the lower tax revenue from cutting taxes on businesses, it put the U.S. much further into debt due to deficit spending. Now, we also had an increase in conflicts in the Middle East during this time. So some of this was tied to our conflict with the Soviet Union, and other incidents were related to our backing of Israel and our problems with Iran. From 1979 to 1989, the U.S. supported the Afghanis against the Soviet invasion of the country. The Soviets were trying to expand their influence and resources and invaded Afghanistan. Because this was a violation of the U.S. policy of containment, we wanted to stop it. However, America didn't send troops. We sent military supplies, weapons, money, and other support like that to the groups who were opposing the Soviets. Now, who were those groups opposing the Soviets? Well, you may have actually heard of the group. The Taliban was the group we sent support to so that they could fight attacks against the Soviets and keep communism out of Afghanistan. A similar action took place in Iran. Iran and Iraq were fighting over two areas that bordered both countries. Both were claiming the land as theirs. So due to our negative history with Iran, like the Iran hostage crisis, things like that, the U.S. chose to send support to Iraq to help them push the Iranians out of the territory. And who do you think we sent weapons and support to in Iraq? Yep, Saddam Hussein, somebody else you may have heard of. So there were also some terrorist actions against the US and other Westerners in the Middle East. And we'll actually look at these all together later in this unit. So you now have a pretty good idea of Reagan's overall actions as president. He was also involved in some scandals, which is our next set of notes. So this is the end of US Note 6.7. Hopefully you learned something, and I'll see you in class with any questions you have.